Yes, hello. It's Jason Louv, and this is the 38th episode of the Ultraculture podcast. My guest for today is Gea Philes, who is an awesome artist and somebody that I've known for a long time. She's been my friend for over 10 years. We met in New York back in the heady days of, the early occult counterculture in the mid-2000s, around the time I was working at Disinformation. And she had been doing art for Feral House, including for Apocalypse Culture 2 for the late and sadly missed Adam Parfrey. Gea is a great artist and a great friend and a fellow magical being and somebody that I look to for a little bit of grounding influence from time to time. It's good to talk to somebody who just, has been through it and gone to the other side, as it were. We've just been through so many of the same cultural experiences and cultural touch points and moments and, the New York underworld and so on and so forth. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to her, we kind of have this slightly world-weary, outlook on how things are going. And, magic has become so popular now. And it's interesting to watch people just getting into it and going through all these experiences that are totally new for them. But, of course, many people have gone through before. And many people before, I got into magic went through it and on back through history. The prayer wheel keeps turning, as it were. So here's a bit from her official biography, just so I properly introduce her. Gea is a Chilean-born, multidisciplinary, self-taught artist based in New York. Her unique work encompasses drawing, painting, illustration, and digital media. Often focusing on disturbing and explicit subjects, her drawings juxtapose sweetness and repulsion, presented in a dreamlike pop surrealism, in which she explores the nether regions of our collective psyche. An autodidact, she has exhibited solo and in group shows in New York, Los Angeles, Santiago, Zurich, Kyoto, and Toronto. Her works appear in limited edition art books by international publishers such as Timeless Editions, Le Dernier Cri, and Re-Surgio. One of the Re-Surgio titles she's featured in is now part of the New York Museum of Modern Art's permanent collection. 2016 saw the release of her monograph Penetralia, a compendium of full-color and line pencil illustrations. She has directed music videos for Momus, J.G. Thirlwell, and Jeffrey Butzer, which received acclaim from the late great movie critic Roger Ebert and film director Guy Maddin. Gea is presently working on a follow-up book with Timeless Editions in France. This is absolutely one of my favorite conversations that I've had on the podcast so far, and you're about to find out exactly why that is. Okay, so by the way, thank you to all the people who have been writing in, expressing how much they like the podcast. I got really, really positive feedback about the last one that I did, which was the reading from John Dee and the Empire of Angels. People really enjoyed that one. They were saying that it's the best show that I've done so far. And people are definitely asking for more solo casts, so I'll probably start working a few of those in along with the interviews. And there's lots of interviews coming up. But in the meantime, how would you like to spend Saturday hanging out with me? This is very possible. So some of you may know and some may not yet know. I now have an office hours feature on magic.me. It's every 2 weeks. You get to hang out in an open class setting with me and several other students and ask questions live on video if you like, or just audio. Or you can write in questions, and basically I hang out with everybody on Saturday and take any questions that people have about magic, about spirituality, about their personal practice, about how to break through difficulties that they're having either in their personal practice or that they're trying to overcome in life using the techniques that I'm teaching. So that feature is currently available to everyone who is a subscriber at magic.me. Not the email list, but the actual full site, monthly, yearly, or lifetime subscriptions. And all of those people have full access on Saturday. You can come, you can hang out with me, you can ask questions live, you can ask questions in advance if you can't make that time, and I'll answer them on the video, which will be recorded, and then the video is available for everyone after the fact. So it's held 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Saturday, every other Saturday. And the next session coming up is this Saturday, so September the 29th. And lots of people make the live time, but if you're in a different time zone or you're busy and that time is not feasible for you, that's okay. You can just write in your question ahead of time at the website, and I will answer it in the video, which will be available for everyone afterwards. So these are pretty amazing sessions. People have been asking really on-point questions, and everybody benefits from everyone else's questions. Obviously, you can get yours asked, but there's some pretty high-level questions being asked, and we've been working through, a lot of the material that's on magic.me. I've been addressing practice questions, but in addition to that, I'm also letting people in that group know about new things that I'm working on, personal research and development that I'm doing about how to alter consciousness, about how to get into magical states, about how to do magic more effectively. I'm not static. I'm constantly growing. I'm not just continually teaching the same techniques from when I started Magic Me like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm constantly experimenting, for long periods of every day. And so I've started bringing out some of those new findings to my students, of course, but that stuff is only for the people who are subscribed. It's not going to be on the podcast. It's not going to go into blog posts. It's not going to be up anywhere else. It's just for the people who are site subscribers and who are participating in those sessions. I currently consider the students that are coming to those sessions among my best students. They're showing up, they're doing the work, they're taking it seriously, they're asking really good questions. And so, since I consider them among my best students, I want to bring them the best new material that I have to offer. So, if you're interested in joining these sessions and becoming a member of this very elite group, the way to do it is to become a subscriber at magic.me, so monthly, yearly, or lifetime. All three are the same, doesn't matter which one you get. And then jumping in. You can see on magic.me, there's a link that says Office Hours with Jason Louv. Click that, you'll be brought up to speed. And as long as you're a subscriber, you'll have access on the Saturdays that we do office hours. So the next one is coming up. It's this Saturday, September 29th. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you there, to interacting with you in class, to fielding your questions, and welcoming you to being a member of that really special group. And in the meantime, you're really going to enjoy this podcast. So please give a warm welcome to Gea Philes. How's it going, Gea?
Hey, what's up?
Thank you for coming on to the podcast. You are in New York right now. And
yeah.
How's everything going?
Well, it's not raining, so it's good. This is also my first podcast, so it's a bit nerve-wracking.
Oh, it's fine. It's just conversational. And you have a show going right now, you mentioned.
Yeah, it's in Kyoto, Japan. It's a group show. There's like a lot of great artists, and it's only for a few days. But it's pretty much an honor to be asked to show there, because there weren't many foreigners showing at that particular gallery. So it's an honor.
What stuff do you have in the show?
It's all color pencil. That's my main thing. It's 5 drawings, and then I'm selling some stuff as well. It's 6 drawings, 2 older ones, and the rest are all new. And you could go look at them on my website at geaphiles.com.
So how would you describe your art to people who haven't seen it before? I mean, it's kind of like psychopathic mass murdering schoolgirls with as drawn by the Marquis de Sade or something like, how would you describe it?
Marquis de Sade's good. I wouldn't say psychopathic. Okay. I feel like I'm channeling every girl out there, and because girls are crazy, girls are wild, and it's like you're supposed to be like nice and proper and prim, but they're not. They're all fucked up in the head. Like they fantasize about weird stuff. They run around doing dangerous stuff all the time, and that's what I wanted to embody in my artwork. So, but yeah, it's all like just pretty much. I use like the young woman as a character, but it just pretty much it shouldn't just be, it's not really just about young women. It's just about me in general and my changes and my life and stuff. And it's all done in color pencil, which is like the worst medium to use because no one takes you seriously. And
why is that? Why is that?
I don't know. I even had like this one boy. He's like, "Oh, I can't wait to come see your studio." And I'm like, "Well, it's everything's in a drawing pad." And they're like, "Oh," like they were picturing like big paintings everywhere. For some reason, that makes you more of an artist. But when they see everything in like a normal sketchbook, they're like, "Oh, that's not." Yeah, I don't know.
So your art definitely, I mean, like as you touched on, you're definitely depicting things that make people really uncomfortable, and parts of things that people don't like to think about, or parts of themselves they would rather not think about. And I'm curious how, what's the reaction been like to that? How do people react when they see, the type of stuff that you do?
Well, when I first started, my main like fan base was all men and older men,
Dirty old men.
Dirty old men, because I was young and cute too. So it's like I was drawing these perverted drawings, and it was just all old men pretty much. But now it's like all young girls. They love it. And I mean, I had some shows in California that I was able to be at La Luz de Jesus, and people like to point things out because I put a lot of detail into stuff, and also they giggle a lot. But most of it's pretty welcoming. I think they're just sort of like, wow, like why is this in here? And like, and the colors are all pretty, so they're kind of drawn to it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's been very positive, though some people have nicknamed a few things, but most of it's pretty welcoming these days. And it's like I don't really do stuff to be gratuitous either. I mean, there's violence in it, but I mean, I have a lot of pent up anger, so to me, it's not like gratuitous violence. It's always like saying something, but if it really just depends on who's looking at it, I guess.
Why do you have pent up anger, Gea?
I'm all traumatized.
Yeah, let's tell me more. Why? What's going on?
No, I think I just have a lot of issues from growing up and stuff. I mean, it wasn't. I was born in Chile, and then I came to America when I was 8 years old. But the trip was very rough. I'm pretty much what you call a wetback. I arrived in the back of a truck, and there's a lot of things I don't remember. They've just been sort of like wiped clean from my head. And even my siblings too, like they'll remember some things, but they don't remember other stuff. And some of the stuff they remember is like really horrifying. And I'm like, I don't even remember any of that. So I think there's a lot of issues there that eventually I'll deal with. But in the meantime, it makes for good art.
So what was the story there? I mean, I don't think we've ever talked about this in detail, even though we've known each other for something like 10 years now.
Yeah, well, it's not something like you could bring up, like, oh, hey, by the way, like I snuck in, and I'm legal, by the way, now, so there's
Okay.
no one needs to call and deport me or anything. Yeah, no, yeah, it's sort of a hard topic. I mean, I always used to just say as a joke, yeah, I came to this country in the back of a truck, or I fell out of the back of a truck, and here I am in America. It's just sort of like a opening line or something, and people would just laugh. But yeah, no, it's actually pretty horrible and traumatizing and awful. And yeah, I think there's a lot of pent up anger but also being taken out of like an environment where you felt very safe, and then just thrown into a country where you had no idea, you didn't know the language, you didn't know how to communicate with people. But because of that, I started drawing very early on because I didn't know that I didn't know how to say that I was hungry, so I would just draw pictures of food or something, and then like someone would be like, oh, she wants to eat or something. So in that way, it helped me develop my visualization more. But yeah.
What were the circumstances that led to you, coming to the U.S.? Like, what was going
Politics,
on in Chile?
because it's Chile.
Fleeing.
Everyone flees for politics. Actually, like with the whole Chile thing, yeah, my family was very political. Not my mom and dad so much, but I had a lot of relatives that were, just protesting and revolutionaries and exiled. I had one that was exiled to Brazil, and I didn't get to see him for a really long time. But he ended up, making the best of it. He married a woman there, and has a bunch of kids there, so it's like so it kind of worked out good for him. But like, yeah, it was just kind of messed up living in a place where, I mean, even when I was young, I just remember like there was all these curfews, and around 10 o'clock at night, like people used to just take pots and pans and just start banging on them. It sounded like it's like some kind of industrial concert, and we just like the kids just be like hiding underneath the table while the grown-ups be banging on these like not drums, on these like pots and pans just to like make a loud sound to protest the curfew. Um, yeah, I think like my dad ended up losing his job and things were just really bad, and so they decided that they were going to come to America because my grandmother was here and my grandfather was here, but I don't know if they are very sketchy about why we had to take such a long journey, because I mean I just remember the plane stopping in like Peru, and then from there we just had to like kind of trek it all the way. My dad is very stubborn, so he wasn't going to go back. He was just going to keep moving on forward. I'm pretty stubborn too. I get it from him. Um, I can't really blame him either, because it's just sort of like they got rid of everything they had in Chile, so obviously it made sense for them to keep going, even though it was just not really in the best interest of their children. But I mean, I'm happy I'm here. I definitely made a better life for myself here, sort of.
It sounds like sometimes you're a little homesick, or you wish you had stayed there.
I'm not homesick, but I know that my life would have been totally different. I probably wouldn't have even done artwork. I would have been like in gymnastics or something, because I was like one of those like really annoying kids, that wanted to be like a ballerina, and I was like on stage plays like really young. I was like a real like wallflower, and I was competing and doing gymnastics things. So maybe I would have been in the Olympics or some kind of weird shit like that. But it definitely would have been like this like starving artist in New York type shit. So.
Huh.
Sometimes I wonder, like, what would it, how would things have turned out? Would I have been better adjusted mentally, or is this a gift that I got? Being screwed up is a gift. I don't know.
Huh. So, what happened when you got to the U.S.? I mean, I guess first of all, so you said in the back of a truck and you had to cross the border.
Yeah, you were stuck in a truck with like a bunch of people. Like there were like different types of people there. They were all like squashed. Like I mean, it's just sort of like you couldn't even move. I just remember this like old woman praying like nonstop, just like saying a million prayers, and my foot was like bent in a weird angle, and it was like I was in so much pain, but I didn't want to say anything because everyone else just seemed really scared, so I just kind of held in the pain. Maybe that's why I'm such a pain slut these days. Um, so it's like so we were just like all just there, like hoping that we would get there, and we did. And then there's like this family in California that used to just help out people, took us in, and like let us stay there for like I don't even know how long. Like that's the thing. It's like I don't have no recollection of how long we stayed in California, except that it was just sort of like paradise. And I think that's why me and my younger brother gravitate to going to California all the time, because it was just sort of like it was just so nice when we got there. I just remember
it's great here.
Yeah, I remember. Well, I know. Yeah, I know you lived there. Of course,
Right.
you hate it. But like as a kid, like
No. I'm not. I'm not being sarcastic.
Oh, okay.
You got to qualify that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just remember like them turning on the TV, and it was like MTV, and there was like Wham and like Madonna, and I was just like, wow, this is like the best place on earth. And then eventually we made it into New York, where we were met up by my grandparents, and then never left.
Wow. And then what was I'm curious, you touched on it a little bit already, but your experience in America, you talked about you were having to draw pictures to communicate. And did you find it welcoming? Did you find that you were socially frozen out? Especially, and I guess my first question is, how old were you at this time?
Probably like 9.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
So
very
really
young. I
young.
mean, I felt like a pet monkey, like people were just like really like sort of like showing me around, but as sort of like this sort of object, and that was fun for a while until then, then they got bored of me and moved on to the next thing. But at first I felt like, like I felt like I was always putting on a show anyway, because people just wanted to, see me do something stupid so they could just like, giggle and stuff. But early on, I got a lot of respect for drawing as well. So it was just sort of like they would also ask me to draw them pictures or copy something from our magazine or something. Um, yeah, it was welcoming at first, so it wasn't so horrible.
And did you know English already, or did you have to pick it up
Well, the funny
at
thing
that
is,
time?
my mom in Chile was like an English teacher, but like it was just when it came down to it, it was just like pretty much nothing. Like I had no idea, so I had to pick it up. And the worst thing was that they put me in all like the really slow classes. Nothing that's wrong with slow classes, but like when I because I was good at mathematics and stuff, so when I would do something good, they were like the teachers would just kind of like fall over, like, oh my god, she can do something, and it's like, yeah, I'm not stupid, I just don't know how to communicate. Like, what the fuck. And that I think affected me to how I felt about the school system because I felt I was never challenged enough,
Hmm.
and it led me just always be bored by school because I was never. I ended up finding my own education through like books and film and whatever, but it was school just did not interest me at all.
Yeah, I think we have that in common, definitely.
Yeah, you,
Yeah.
you always feel like an outsider, like but I think that's also helped me in a way because I never felt like I needed to belong anywhere. And I feel like people these days are always trying to go into a group, labels and we're this, we're that. And for me, it was just like, I don't need any of that. It's just like, I have years of experience of just being sort of not feeling like I belonged. And also when I did go back to Chile, I didn't feel like I belonged there either. So it's just sort of like, there's no place for me anywhere really.
So is that what about what I guess at a certain point you gravitated towards the industrial scene and then maybe a little bit the occult scene as well. And
I
what was
would say
your
punk,
experience there like?
punk
Punk.
definitely. Industrial came like later because there weren't any good punk shows going on. So then you just go to and plus there were cuter boys at the industrial shows. So yeah, no, punk was definitely good because it was also another thing. It's like you don't need to fit in, so it's like fuck you to everybody. So that was great. It was like love it. And the occult stuff, it was just something that was always there because of in Chile people believe in all that stuff. They everyone there's witches, there's spirits. Your grandma tells you stories all the time. I had like an aunt, a great aunt who supposedly like gnomes would like jump on her bed and like make her crazy, so she would have to put out sand so they could count it and not bother her or mess up her garden. And like so these are like stories I grew up with. So it's
That's
just
so
sort of
crazy. Let me just jump in real quick before we lose that. I just want to point out that I recently met Whitley Strieber, the guy that wrote Communion.
oh my god.
And he not I only on I did his podcast. I didn't meet him in person.
Mm.
Hopefully, I'll meet him in person at some point. But he describes exactly the same experience
Oh,
in I think it's in Communion. But he just wrote a book called The Supernatural, where he describes kind of his experiences from this time. And I think he describes them as either gnomes or trolls. And he describes them jumping on his bed at night as in like abduction type experiences, and showing up at his bed. And John D and Kelly describe something fairly similar too. It was gnomes showing up. Anyways, just an aside. Sorry.
well,
Go
the thing
on.
is that also like her son used to see them too. So it's just sort of like so it was just sort of common knowledge that there was always these forces and stuff. And then my sister too, she had like supposedly someone had bewitched her when she was very young, and they had to bring her to like a to a medicine woman to take care of her and stuff like that. And so yeah, to me it was just sort of the norm. And then my aunt too, she was like a big practitioner, and and she kind of went nuts, which I always feel like it's also made me very weary about even trying to get too involved. I always pussyfoot around it. I feel like I don't have to practice much of it because there's just so much around me, and people are also that do it are totally gravitated towards me all the time. I must have some kind of energy that just draws these people in. But yeah, like there's so I've heard the horror stories of of some things and also some more positive things too. So it's always been an interest, and so in not even an interest, even if I wanted it not to be an interest, it's just always been in my family.
Well, I'm curious about this. The difference between what you saw there versus, for instance, the type of magic that kids do in the in the industrial world or, in Brooklyn or that type of thing. It just seems like there's such a completely different cultural, I mean, probably completely different practices also, but completely different cultural vibe and context around those two different things, to say the
Oh,
least.
I'm gonna make a lot of enemies.
Go ahead.
I think here is mostly for the fashion and for the theatrics of it. Everyone wants to be surrounded by people and have everyone look at them and be like, ooh, and just dance around a flame or something. But growing up, I mean, it's just like this. People got really like scary. They looked like they were possessed, and the blood would be coming out of their hands. Like it was just like
whoa, what's that?
like,
What was that about?
oh, because we also used to go on these like sort of religious retreats, and like there'd be people with like just like blood all over their hands. I know, and just like praying to like the sky, and it was just like so it just. I just feel like
was that blood they'd put on their hands, or was this like a stigmata maybe? Or
as a kid, they looked like blood was coming out of their hands. For all I know, they could have just been grabbing onto their hands so tightly that blood was coming out, or or maybe they were just like, I don't know. I really can't explain it, but it was just like, it was visually. I've always been seeing like weird stuff. And then I remember also my aunt used to do a lot of like witchcraft type things, and I don't really know what exactly because I was too young, but there was in her basement. And then there was a point where we couldn't even go to her basement because we just got the energy in there got so scary. And so us kids playing around, because they used to have a pool table, we just started freaking out. And then there was all these like weird like stains on the wall that were like showing up, and my uncle would paint over them, and they would just keep coming back, and it was just like really weird. And yeah, so it was just, and that's like you as a kid, like it's like 12-year-old kid like looking at this, they're like, oh,
that's that's a little frightening.
Yeah,
it's so crazy for me because in my world, in Jason's universe, like for me, like magic, like basically means meditation, Kabbalah. It's kind of just like a way of, focusing the will and frankly, trying to attain higher mental states of more focus, more clarity, more compassion, more awareness, more effectiveness. But it's kind of like a language thing, because when you just say the word magic, it means, not only does it mean basically every spiritual practice on the planet, it also is just this huge Rorschach blot that anyone can project anything onto. But there's so much of the type you're describing. It's like, yeah, all that stuff is real too, and it's frightening. And I think that a lot of, it's like, how do we distinguish between those things?
well, I think also because Chile in general is like a very Catholic country, so it's like I think that also influences too what people see, and also the needs for like weird punishment or something. I don't know.
It's becoming a recurring theme here.
Yeah, because it seems like they're always like suffering or something. That's what it always seems to me. Like it just seems like people are always suffering. Well, that's just my point of view.
You've gotta suffer for purification.
Yeah. I think I told you too. I was interested in having a dom see me just so I could just reset myself and just be pure again or something. Because it's just like, I don't know. It's just sort of something that's engraved, I guess, in my head.
What is that thought process like?
What, wanting to be punished?
Yeah, what you just described.
To be relieved?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's completely a perverse thing. It's not like, oh yeah,
it doesn't sound like it.
Me. It's just more of like you're paying your dues. Like you fucked up, and you're gonna pay your dues, and then you can move on. I think that's what it is.
That sounds very Catholic.
Yeah, it does, right? I know, and I'm not a Catholic. I'm not anything, but I'll believe it all. And also, I don't know. I mean, it's just some things you can't shake. I mean, look at Luis Buñuel. Biggest hated the church so much, but all his movies are super religious. It's like you just can't escape it. One
thing that I think Terence McKenna said, is either Terence McKenna or actually I'm going to say it was Timothy Leary, who of course is Catholic, where he said or it was, I don't know exactly if he said it, but it was related to me by somebody else that he said it, that toward the end of his life, he said, yeah, you can do all this acid, you can do all these crazy mind manipulation techniques, but if you were born Catholic, you're Catholic forever. And I think the Catholic Church also has said, if we have them before, very sinisterly, if we have them before 3, we have them for a lifetime. It's a very
Yeah.
frightening statement.
And I used to be in the church choir too. So, I mean, like I was, yeah. Which
How's
is so
that?
funny because now everything, and yeah, everyone's like, oh, everything you draw is so like demons and like so satanic and all this stuff. But I don't really find it that way. But how was that? I mean, it fucked up my voice, like it charred my voice, I think. Or maybe that was the drugs. I don't know. But I used to have a really like high pitched voice, and now it's just like now, well, you could hear it now. It's definitely not that.
That sounds great. What do you make of all the crazy news coming out about the church now? It seems to all be all be coming to light. I was about to say falling apart, but I don't know if the Catholic Church will ever truly fall apart. So
it's no surprise. I mean, like there was even like at the church that I used to sing choir, there was like a priest that was having an affair with this like married woman and stuff. So and everyone knew it. So I mean, it's not like you could pretend to be like holier than thou or be righteous and live properly, but deep down inside, people are people, and majority of people, I believe, are just fucked up and corrupted anyway.
Do you think that's all it is, or is there something more organized? Well, okay, well, there you go. What's going on there with the church?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like like I said, I there's this need for punishment and sacrifice. I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, better let's sacrifice these young children instead of us having to go through the pain, right? I don't know. Maybe.
Wow. I don't know. I'm a good Protestant boy from Southern California. We believe in like bleaching our teeth and going to Sunday bake sales and things like that. It's like,
oh my God.
Our thing is aggressive boringness, just like aggressive, stale, plain American boringness is the Protestant kick. There's not the whole there's really not the need for punishment at all, because the whole Protestant thing is well, it has its own certain severity depending on what denomination you're in. But the Protestant outlook is pretty much, just read the Bible and develop a personal relationship with Jesus and be born again, and pretty much everything's fine,
Well, that sounds better. I mean, it sounds so much better because, like, I think with the Catholics too, it's just sort of like you're never good enough, right? You're never, and I feel like that's also like infiltrated my relationships, which is like why I think my love life is just disastrous because I always feel like I'm never good enough. But I think it's like you're never good enough, and also like any mistake that you do, is bad. Like, and I mean, you could try to prevent it, but you're most likely still going to do it. So you're just bad. You're just born bad. You're born evil or something. So.
Very, very Catholic.
Yeah.
The Protestant thing is, yes, we all think we're born evil too, but it's basically like, yep, but Jesus loves me. He's my best friend. It's very like Ned Flynn. It's very
Jesus died for my sins, and now I have to pay back.
Oh, it's a debt. I see. Well, that's very, transactional love is very not true love. It's like if it's a transaction, it's not real love.
Well, it can be your Anna Nicole Smith. So she had true love with her daddy.
of course. What was I going to say? Oh yes, like Ned Flanders is truly like the avatar of Protestant Christianity in America. So yeah, I have noticed there is a thing, and I think we've talked about it before. Like, there's a huge difference between the magic that I got interested in. Is, I very much got interested through the route of, Timothy Leary, Robert Anton Wilson, hippies, like the hippie counterculture. And that is very, very different from, there's so much magic that's like so steeped in Catholicism and the worldview that you're talking about, and demons and damnation and punishment and saints and fetishes. And it's just, I guess some people enjoy it. It's for me, I'm too boring for that. It's like, I like things to be mellow.
Yeah, no, I want things to be mellow. I do, but then it's just sort of like there's this like deep rooted thing just like slips out. But yeah, no, I mean I love Robert Anton Wilson, and I love I love everything that he pretty much says. He's just, to me, he's like a savior very early on too, because it was just like, just stop it with your hangups, just go, just like chill out, and like everything is true and everything's not true, and just go with maybe.
I really
um,
feel, and I have felt for a while, that rediscovering Robert Anton Wilson is one of the best things this culture could do right now, for all the
yeah,
reasons you've described, and also the whole concept of reality tunnel and understanding that your reality tunnel is not the only reality tunnel, and it's okay for multiple reality tunnels to exist. That right there is, it would help, I think.
and his sense of humor. I think everyone could use a little bit of sense of humor these days. Everyone's too damn uptight.
Absolutely. Although I will say there's a certain, going back and reading Bob Wilson and Tim Leary, there is a certain, oh, well, there's a certain like kitsch element where it's like, oh, just do acid and everything will be fine. It's this kind of
No,
the
I mean,
60s optimism.
that doesn't work. I've done acid. I've been with people that do a lot of acid, and there's no, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it's
nice
nice for a
try.
little bit, but like a nice dream. When you go to sleep, you have to wake up sometime.
Right.
So
There's such this reliance in that model of, oh, well, you do, it's this kind of like, well, do acid, well, then do mushrooms, then do DMT, and you'll open up higher consciousness. It's like, no, you'll open up the ability to like couch surf and borrow things from people.
and not give them back.
Right,
Can I borrow
right.
this book and never give it back to you? Oh, I forgot.
There's this great meme that was circulated at some point on the internet of like a hippie with this giant, massive dreadlocks, and the caption is, "Sup, bruh? Can I borrow everything?"
I mean, I think acid definitely does help to some extent. It does open up certain things, but that being said, it doesn't open up uh, a lot of things for everyone. I think most people are closed, have certain things about them closed up, so they'll never see the capabilities or possibilities that acid could bring you. So in that aspect, it's a waste. I think if you use it right, it could definitely educate you a little bit about yourself also and about your surroundings. But there's not much else it can do.
What do you think the right way to use it is?
The right way to use it would be to, well, first I would say the first trip that you should take just should be all about you. Just concentrate on yourself and deal with your demons there. And then after that, just from there on, just try to whatever. If there's something that you're seeking, if you're taking acid anyway, so try to find out what that is, and don't like get burned out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And yeah, I think take it slow is a good one too.
Yeah,
Once a month is
don't be
good,
like
or
taking
at
like
least.
20 tabs in one day. Like you don't really need that. Are you Jimi Hendrix? No, like just stop.
And do you even want to be Jimi Hendrix? It didn't go too well for him.
Yeah, but he did make some incredible music.
He did,
So
yeah. But
yeah.
then the question is always is like, how much was the drugs and how much was innate talent?
Well, I think it was a combination of both. I mean, Sid Barrett, there's a great story about how he was like totally fucked up on acid, and they need to get this guitar part down, and he tells them to like he like plays this like really fucked up thing, and then he tells them to play it backwards, and it fits perfectly in the song. So it's like, yeah, who knows? There's definitely a lot of things that go on in the mind when you're taking acid, so I won't knock anything down. Um,
It's always fascinating to talk to people who, well, instead of talking, I'll say to, talk to people who are just finding out about the psychedelic experience and just finding out about, maybe the idea of magic or spirituality and things like that. And then talk to people who are on the other side of it and have gone through that and are, maybe a bit world weary. And yeah, it's, I think that both of us have, well, I don't think, I mean, I know both of us have watched a lot of crazy stuff go down and lived through a pretty crazy period of history.
yeah.
The New York counterculture, 9/11, I remember when I met you, I didn't know anybody who, it's like, we truly were weirdos. Like nobody was interested in magic.
Yeah, but we must have been quite a sight. We were both like young and cute and just sort of like, it, like pretty much had this like energy going. while everyone else was pretty like just I don't know, not that exciting, I believe.
Yeah. Well, they were like what you're describing with like people at New York shows just like standing around with their arms folded, wearing all black, staring at their feet.
Yeah. And we were just like sort of just waltzing in and out of places. It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah, but those were dark times too. I mean, they were very traumatic times, particularly the fallout from 9/11 and just watching America crumble thanks to the neocons and
yeah, I mean, like the 9/11 thing too was horrible when it happened. It was like really horrible, but there was also like afterwards there was like this really strong community in New York that I'll always miss. I mean, because the people that stayed were like it's because they lived there. It wasn't like tourists or anything, or people just like doing going to school, and it was just like people that were just not afraid. They were staying there, so everyone treated each other really, really well, and it's like everyone was looking out for each other at that time, and it was so strong. And then all of a sudden, it was just like all this like capitalist stuff started happening. All these things started getting torn down, built up to like it almost seemed like it changed overnight after that. It was just, and now it's just like super expensive and gross and no soul.
Oh man, when do you think that was that if you could put a date on that, when do you think that would have been?
I can't really remember, but it's like whenever you went walking around, there was always like a cloud of haze. So it almost seemed very apocalyptic as well. And you would go to places and sometimes they'd be like totally empty, there'd be like maybe like one person working there. And then you just like sit there and talk to them because like they didn't, like they didn't have anything else to do. And also like they were just happy to see someone else there, So it was I have very fond memories of.
This was right after 9/11?
Yeah, right after 9/11.
Okay. Yeah, it was so weird. I mean, I think I got to New York in 2001, but then I was in London for a while, and maybe 2003. I must have moved there around 2003 or 4, maybe 2005. It's all a haze, as it should be.
Yeah.
But, I definitely remember that it was still, it was already, New York is a financial capital of the world. And I think that the turfing out of artists and bohemians definitely started in the 80s. I remember when I was first living with Genesis and Jay, they took me to see this movie in the East Village that was footage of the NYPD going through that area that's now, I think, around Washington Square where the NYU dorms are. And just these officers going through, and at that time it was all artist squats and lofts, and just pulling people out of the lofts and clubbing them through the streets like cattle and herding them into paddy wagons. And of course, all the officers, allegedly, but it is what I saw in this film at least, had their badge numbers taped up with black tape. And, the story went that they kind of took all the people and drove them across the state line to New Jersey, dropped them there, and then that was that. Told them they couldn't come back into New York State or they'd be arrested. And then that was Giuliani's cleanup. That was part of the gentrification. And then now it's NYU dorms.
It was because you also had all the shanties from like the homeless people, and there used to be just like tents everywhere all over the park, and it was just almost like a community of like homeless people living out there. And then you had the needle exchange, which provided food for a lot of people as well, and clean needles for junkies. All the squats, there was like that big squat takeover too, where there's still probably footage of like what was it, C squat fighting off like the cops, like and stuff like that. It was very exciting, and also I feel like the city definitely lost its soul when it tried to clean up too much, because it's like they clean it up to make it look good from the outside, but it's still horrible. You can't. It's just all cosmetic, pretty much what they did with the cleanup.
It seems like they were really trying to clean it up to present it to foreign investors, because my sense now is it's all it's Saudis buying stuff in China and things like that.
I mean, they sold a lot, right? And they succeeded in doing that. But, like you still see tons and tons of homeless everywhere. And like, all over like the subways, the train stations. I mean, Long Island Railroad too, there's tons like, and you see also like lots of cops and military people, but they don't really care. It's not like if they were really serious about cleaning up stuff, they would still be trying to. They really don't care. They cared for a time because they wanted to make money out of it, and now it's just like we don't,
Wow.
and yeah.
Well, I remember when I got there, there was already this sense of kind of the battle being lost, and I remember kind of coming with wide eyes and being like, "This is going to be great. It's going to be like, I'm going to meet, people like Andy Warhol's Factory, and it's going to be like it's going to be like Lou Reed albums. It's going to be awesome." And really, what I found was what you're describing. Of course, I gravitated and found cool people, and it was an amazing community and an amazing scene, and I had priceless experiences, that really formed me and shaped me. But there was this sense of things were already on the out, and I think that Giuliani had just passed that law, or no, well, it couldn't have been just. I mean, there had been this law, anti-cabaret laws passed, so that you couldn't even dance in New York and things like that.
Well, you could dance in some places, but you couldn't get totally nude. And
it couldn't be more than like 10 people or something like that.
Yeah, and then they got really strict, and then they closed down everything.
So what's it like now? I mean, I've been out of New York for 10 years now. What's happening there?
I don't know. People say that there's stuff happening all the time, but I never see it. I mean, there's some galleries that are interesting, but and of course, I love the architecture in New York, and the museums will always be beautiful, and Central Park is gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. But I really don't find too much. And then there's like, oh yeah, everything's going on in Brooklyn. And I tried going to a lot of stuff in Brooklyn, but it doesn't pique my interest. I feel like it's very half-assed. Maybe in a couple of years it'll be better. But that's not to say everyone, because obviously I haven't seen everyone do everything. So there might be some really great people out there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, supposedly there's a very, very strong art community. I just haven't really connected with any of them. To me, I lived in New York for so long, and it's impossible for me to have any shows in New York, right? But I could have shows in France and Japan and like anywhere else. They welcome me with open arms. But New York, no. No one wants me in New York.
You're a true artist, Gea. You must be a true artist when it's like, I'm big in Japan and France, but Americans don't understand me. That's like the ultimate gold star, like hallmark of being a great artist, right?
Like even in my country, Chile, like I've been able to show there, but New York's like impossible. Like what the fuck?
That's bizarre. I'm sure LA would be the art community in LA is great. I'm sure it wouldn't be an issue at all here.
Oh no, I had 2 shows in LA. They've been good to me. But I just think it's sort of like if you could make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I've made it everywhere else except for New York, so I don't know how that.
I would like to modify that by it's kind of like if you can survive the incredible emotional scarring and trauma of living in New York, then you will be numb to anything else that you experience in life.
Pretty much. See, yeah. So I think my living in New York trauma cancels out my other traumas. So maybe that's why I'm not in the insane asylum yet.
Interesting. Well, the other thing I keep hearing about, and we've talked about a little bit, is that apparently everyone in Brooklyn is into magic now, which for me is endlessly bewildering because at the time it's like, when I was in New York, it's like I was working so hard to get like a magic group going, and we had a group, and it was like 3 people, and that was it. And we kept it completely quiet. And
yeah, you can bump into someone without someone trying to put a hex on you.
What? I'm almost afraid to see it because it's like, it's so like how, like, maybe it did. And what happened? Did I like somehow like rip open a portal and just leave it open? And this is is the result. Oh boy.
You punctured a hole and it just all came spilling.
and what is it? Like what does it look like?
I always have people coming up to me asking me like about magic and stuff. I'm always just like, oh yeah, go to I always give your stuff out. I'm like, if you want to do it right, I'm like, just
thank you.
Go look at Jason's website because there's too many charlatans too now as well. They see a cute girl and then they just want to like, ooh, let's do some sex magic.
Oh no.
So there's also a lot of that. So I was like, I always try to point them in the right direction.
Lord forgive them; they know not what they do.
Well, I think that's another thing too about the people are like all into like hexing people or like doing like magic for love, and I think those are the worst things you could do.
Those are the most destructive things there are.
Yeah, you don't want to curse people, and you don't want to like impose on anyone's will either. Like make someone fall in love with you. That's horrible.
It's like sexual assault.
Yeah, pretty much. Like so, I feel like I don't know. There's just too much of that.
That's terrible. It's like I've got two better ideas. Instead of hexing people, do magic on yourself to move on to something better.
Yeah.
And instead of putting love spells on people, like try going to the gym and doing
Yeah.
magic on yourself to make yourself
Do
more
some
charming and
Pilates. That'll
likable.
make you, yeah. Get your butt to stick up. That'll attract a lot of people.
Exactly. Like this is my whole viewpoint of magic. It's like magic. You should be doing magic to improve your life, and you do magic on yourself, not other people. Magic or spirituality or self development or NLP or whatever you want to call it is for becoming a better person. We've only got so much time on this planet, and we're all in like a race against death. And we want to be as cool as we can before we go and live. You should be living like Anthony Bourdain or something. It's like,
Well, no, he killed himself.
well, I'll caveat that.
Or he was murdered. We don't know.
We don't know. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
But caveat, but living. I just say that just because I've been into rewatching some of his stuff recently, and somebody that in love with life and having cool experiences all the time and surrounded by great people, but also feel satisfied and happy inside. I mean, and if you can just being happy with yourself inside is worth 10 million times as much as whatever you have going for you on the outside. That's what really matters.
I feel like there's also too much emphasis on being happy. Like I think happy is sort of an entitled thing that people feel like, oh, I need to be happy. I can't do this because I have to be happy. I mean, I draw and I do art because I love doing it, but that doesn't make me happy. A lot of times it makes me miserable, but it's something that I still love doing. And I think that also people like live in countries that are less fortunate, like they don't really think about being happy every time. They just think about like surviving and trying to get by. I think happiness is a luxury, and if you could get it, that's great. But I think most of all, you should just be sort of try to like, just have a livable atmosphere and not be a dick. Like.
Okay, fair enough. I think, or perhaps can we just say, do your true will? It's like
do your true will. Do your true. If everyone was doing their true will, it'd be so much better.
Yeah, and it's interesting to go back also to. I think that despite his many, many severe flaws, Crowley, of course, had some great both ideas and technical contributions. And the idea of doing one's true will is like one of the most important ideas in magic, and it's unfortunately one that has been lost in the so-called occult community. But
yeah, I don't understand why. I mean, like that to me too. When I read that, like in junior high, I was just like, yeah, the calling, like answer your calling. And, and usually it's true because anytime I stray away from doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which I think is doing art, everything goes horribly wrong for me, horribly wrong. And every time I go back to it, it's like I sort of get rewarded for being like, just keep doing it. So it's just like, I think you have, that's very important. And I'm glad you mentioned it.
I think that's it. And I think any artist will understand that instinctively, particularly one who's had to fight against, who's going against the grain and having to make their own way. But if you go back and you read that stuff, it's really interesting to read it in context where really what he's saying is the most important thing is to do your true will. And here's some tools that might help you do that, but they're not the most important. They're not the be all end all. And so you can do yoga, you can meditate, you can do magic. There's other things like tantra and things like that. Like all these things might help you identify and actualize your true will, but they're not the point. They're just tools. Magic is just another tool among many. And that, I think, is something that people really need to understand because magic has just become, like you said, it's just another game of dress up.
Yeah, it's not a fashion. It should be. It's definitely a tool. Like if the magic is like a computer or color pencils or or your or pots and pans, whatever. But it's definitely something to help you make something. So get to it.
Absolutely. I still love William Burroughs' view of the world. I always go back to it where he sees everything as an addiction, like anything can become an addiction, of course, drugs can be an addiction. Magic can be an addiction. Meditation can be an addiction. And particularly, as I get older, I just see almost all human activity is things that people are addicted to distract themselves from, I would say, their imminent death or the void or something like that. But I think that's a little too existentialist and nihilistic. I think that people, unfortunately, and this is perhaps even more frightening, are constantly getting addicted to things that distract them from their true will or
Yeah,
doing what they know they should be doing.
like iPhones.
How do What do you mean?
People are addicted to iPhones, so they
Oh,
don't they
oh,
don't pay attention to themselves. They just they create an image to portray on their social media through their phones, and they really don't care about what they do in real life as long as the image looks good.
oh, Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's more and more studies coming out linking that to mental illness.
yeah. I think you have to have a big mental disorder to really succeed in it. Because I mean, it's almost or not, or yeah, but also actors are the same way, right? Because like they want to be looked at and they want to create a persona, and I just think everyone's mentally ill. That's why it works so well.
Well, we live in a culture. Let me rephrase it by saying we live in a culture that does not create an environment that makes it easy for people to foster and cultivate good habits or sound mental health.
Yeah, but are we supposed to have good habits? I mean, is a human animal a good person? Like, what are good
There's
habits?
the Catholic coming out
Yeah,
again.
we're all evil. I tell you, all evil.
No, man. No, I'm a Californian hippie. I can't believe that.
Well,
Although I don't
I,
know. These days
yeah,
it's hard to argue with.
well, I think that's why we complement each other well, because you're, the yin and the yang, right? It's like, eh, I mean, and we could still have a discussion. Like, it's not like you're wrong.
Right.
What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, we don't agree on a lot of things, but it's good to have a discussion about, different things that, and different opinions.
How rare is that, right? Well, I can
Very
see it. I
fair.
can see it from both sides, and frankly, I think that just all I have to do is look at social media to immediately think that people could do with a hefty dose of Catholic shame. Perhaps it's like, look at yourselves. Have you no shame?
Yeah, but
Uh,
like they might be shaming themselves in private.
sure,
So I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's going on in their lives. Because then that's the thing, we'll never know because unless
right.
you know them personally, right? Yeah.
Well, totally, yeah. And it's like the extent to which somebody um, pretends to be something in public is usually like a coefficient of the exact opposite, how they actually feel about themselves in private. People pretend to be what they're not so often.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting is that they project all this imagery, right? And then eventually they become these characters. Like you always have like when an actor gets stuck in a role and they can't get out of it. It's like they because they work so hard on creating this image. And I think maybe we'll see a lot more of these like people just sort of flipping out and
Hmm,
thinking that they're the image they created. If
totally.
that hasn't happened already.
I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
Well, that's like magic, it's like the
Yeah.
fake it till you make it principle. But it's like a form of sorcery or black magic in a way.
It
Uh,
definitely is. I mean, it definitely is some sorcery there. I mean, because you're visualizing, right? You're using the visualizing technique, and you're projecting this whole thing, and you having all these people believe it. Oh, eventually, something's gonna happen,
right.
and not for the best either, because right, like it's not well if it's not well thought out, then you got a lot of issues coming.
Well, it's like that Kraftwerk song. Every artist finds himself in the hall of mirrors.
Brings chills.
Yes, but most people aren't actually artists. They're just Instagramming. But I think that's true, and that's scary. One of the tenets of basic psychology is that if you don't if you you're the I forget what type of psychology this is, but the sense that the more distant you actually are from the image you project or who you think you are, like if there's a disjoint between who you think you are and who you actually are behaving as in the world, it causes a lot of psychic wreckage. And I think we're seeing that more and more. And obviously, a more wholesome and healthy version of spirituality or magic or whatever you want to call it is having it come from the inside out, make the change internally and become a healthier and more whole person, and then let that manifest how it does
Yeah, but people want
externally.
shortcuts.
Of
They
course.
want sh- they want shortcuts and they don't want to do the work. And this is what happens. And I think that we had this discussion about how everyone maybe there's like this whole thing about people like I see more that everyone's really into demons and contacting demons
Oh
and stuff,
God.
and it's just like again, it's like they want shortcuts. They don't want to. They don't really want to work on themselves.
Well, it's always been that way, to be fair. And I remember reading. I don't know. The world's been fascinated with demons forever, but it is disturbing to me how I don't know. It's like it's just sad, I guess. Let me put it that way. It's not really disturbing. It's just kind of profoundly sad that it's like I and so many people put so much effort into opening up magic to people, and the first thing they go to is, of course, whoa, demons, darkness, Goetia. It's like, guys,
there's a lot of pictures.
is that's all it is?
It's pictures, yeah.
There's tons of pictures of angels too.
Yeah, but the angels are not as cool.
They have flaming swords.
That's pretty cool. And I love angels, obviously, but I think people everyone's into just ugly and self-destruction, pretty much. So.
Oh man. Well, I remember very clearly when I was in India in 2004. I got like an intro book to Hinduism in India, and I was reading it on the train. I was in the. I think I was in the. This is when I was not even in the Untouchables car, which I didn't have the pushing and shoving ability that everyone does in India to rush into something. So I ended up being left out of the musical chairs of getting a seat on the train. So I was just like hanging in between cars for 24-hour train rides. And I was.
You should have gone to more punk shows when you were younger.
Yeah, right.
It'll give you some training.
Yeah, seriously. But I was reading, about the yugas for the first time, the different ages of mankind, and they were talking about the Kali Yuga, which some people think we're in and some people don't. But they were saying that in the Kali Yuga, everyone has dirty food to eat, GMOs, processed crap. They have dirty water to drink, all the crap that comes out of the tap. Look at Flint, Michigan, all this. They have, and they have dirty air to breathe. Nothing works. The political systems fall apart, and they have only demons to worship. I've never forgotten that. They can't even see the gods or the devas. They worship only demons. It's like, well, meanwhile in Brooklyn.
Well, I think that definitely resonates. Like it definitely seems like it's happening. So.
It seems to be happening culturally too. I mean, so I watched that movie Hereditary the other night. I was profoundly. I'm a softie, so I was.
I really liked it.
You liked it. I'm still disturbed by it. Like 5 days later, I'm like, just get out of my head. I don't want to think about this movie anymore.
It's a good movie if it stays with you.
It's very well done, but it's also like traumatic and disturbing.
What did you find so traumatic about it?
I think. Well, there's a lot of traumatic images in it. Obviously,
are we saying traumatic instead of triggered?
Yes,
I think it's better. I think it's better. I hate triggered.
Yes, we're not using that word. I think it's in a long line of movies like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby that, while yes, very well done, culturally have the effect of reinforcing this dark vibe on magic, or reinforcing this idea that, if you do magic, all demons are going to show up and tear your life apart. Like Hellraiser is the same, or that movie Paranormal Activity. It's like, oh yeah, touch a Ouija board once and demons will show up, and that'll be the end of that. People will drag you out of your bed at night.
But Hellraiser, it was people that were seeking that they came, and she only saw them because it was by accident. But they only came to people that were seeking them. So I don't think you can't say that. Okay, go ahead.
True. Okay. And I love Hellraiser. Don't get me wrong. But which, by the way, as an aside, my understanding of Hellraiser is that the reason Hellraiser exists is that Jeff and Sleazy from Coil loaned Clive Barker a bunch of their like horrific gay S&M magazines in the mid 80s. Like super under the counter stuff, and he was so impressed that he made a whole movie out of it. Anyways,
makes sense.
It's very plausible.
Yeah, because it's very sexy too and horrifying.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
what was I going to say? Oh, well, more broadly though, these movies have the effect of cultural hypnosis and deepening and strengthening the associations of people of magic to demonism and darkness and Satanism and all this stuff, and fear basically underneath it all, being afraid of magic. It's like, well, magic is great. Magic can liberate you. Magic can help you become more alive and more awake. And yet at the cultural level, it's almost like part of the mechanism of keeping people asleep in a way. And it often has a very Catholic vibe, I will add.
Yeah, no, I think we're definitely being conditioned, through, stuff like that. I mean, but I think it's always been that way. I mean, also whenever you see that, like, oh, we're going to be at war with a certain country, if you notice like the movies from a couple of years back, you'll see that the enemies will always be people from those countries or whatever. It's really fucked up. It's like they get it into your mind that these people will be your enemy in the future or whatever.
What do they call that? Predictive programming.
Yeah, I mean, even Jodorowsky, I think that was in Holy Mountain, whether they were just like they conditioned the kids through comics and like toys and stuff to prepare them for like later times.
I love that movie. That's a great movie about magic. That's like the movie about magic in my way of thinking.
Definitely the essential, and also like just like the the most despicable people are the ones that will be able to liberate everybody.
Yes. Yeah, very biblical. So you mentioned that, you've had these experiences with magic in your life and people seem to be, people who are into it gravitate towards you. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it at this point in your life, having seen it, having been around so many people who are interested in it. Like, what's your take on it now?
Well, I feel like it's just sort of the Pandora's box been open. It's everywhere. So you just have to, tread with care. Is that there's definitely a lot of weird shit, a lot of scary stuff, but there's also things you could take some advantage on. So
how do you mean?
Well, it's just it's really hard not to like come across someone doing something, or like I usually like work during the night, like that's like my time to draw and stuff, and there's always things that just are really weird like that happen, and I'm just like, okay, I'll just ignore it and keep drawing.
What's an example? I got to stop you on that because that sounds,
Well, it feels like there's always like around the same time, there's always something that feels like it's looking over my shoulder while I'm drawing. And also then I'll always see like what looks like a cat, and I have two cats, so it's like, and so I can tell when it's them and not, but it looks like a cat, but not really. That just sort of goes around, back and forth, like where the table where I draw and stuff. And also, so I mean, I don't know what it is. Spirits, ghosts, demons, whatever. It's there, but it's definitely around me. And and also, and I know when my grandfather died, my sister was visiting. This is a weird story, and she couldn't sleep, and she like runs down the stairs, and she's also been very like, if anything, like she senses like weird energies all the time. She's like one of those like freaks that will wake up with it from a dream and be like, oh my god, something's gonna happen to this person, and it does. So she couldn't sleep, and she comes downstairs, and I'm drawing and stuff, and then she starts talking. We start talking about my grandfather, and like he was like, my grandfather was always like a practical joker. And all of a sudden, like the doorbell rings, like, and like it's like we just both froze. It's like we just sort of knew it was it. And of course, we go and open. There's like nobody there, but it was just like so fucked up. Whoa. It was just such a weird, yeah. It's like really, really scary.
What was going through your head when that happened?
Well, it was a mixture of being afraid and just laughing, like holy shit. It's like, because it had just happened, like he had just died and she was visiting, because for the funeral and stuff. So it was just like really, it was also a sweet moment because you kind of feel like, oh, they're dead, there's nothing there, but no, it made me feel like, yeah, they still linger around too. So it also makes me wonder, like, we really don't know anything about death and afterlife or anything like that. Well, at least I don't. So
yeah, do you feel like maybe women are more perceptive on these levels in general than men?
Because they menstruate?
Is that it? Is that?
Oh, I don't know.
I said, then more than men. More than men.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't. I mean, there was this one guy who used to come to our house when we were younger, and he used to do metaphysics and stuff. And he was a guy, and he was very open to stuff. But I don't know. He could have been a charlatan. I'm not really sure. But he seemed to be very involved with like energies and stuff. So I can't really say if it's more of a woman thing or a man thing. I know my sister has it, so it's definitely very in tune with her. So maybe I'll say it's more female because she's the only person I've encountered that in a real sense has it, or that's that I don't think is a charlatan. But
You've mentioned the word charlatan a few times.
charlatans,
Charlatans,
charlatans
and they're
everywhere.
definitely everywhere. I'm curious, where do how do you distinguish? What's the line for you between somebody who is and someone who is not?
Well, I think if you're like a magical person, you're not going to discriminate on someone just because they're not wearing like all the jewelry and the cloaks and whatever.
Oh
So I
God.
think right off the bat, if you're going to be an asshole to me, just because I'm wearing a floral dress, and I happen to be wearing like purple shoes.
Has that
you
happened?
Yeah, no, I do.
What?
Well, especially with these like
Who
magical
are you hanging out
circles and
with?
stuff. Oh, well, I'm just walking around Brooklyn.
That
Um,
happens in Brooklyn on the street?
yeah, no, I feel
What?
like it's like they want the costume, Like if you look like a goth,
Wait.
then oh
Oh,
yeah,
I gotta ask you about. Wait, so people are wearing robes and stuff on the street in Brooklyn?
well, not anymore so much. I think a couple years ago, yes.
They were though.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
What the hell?
Not all fishnet, but it could be because of summer. So wait till winter. Maybe the
What
clothes
what
will come
what
back.
were people? What was going on? What were people wearing and why?
Why? Because they everyone wanted to be a witch or a warlock.
Oh my God.
So yeah, and it's just I feel like if you that right off the bat shows me
Oh,
that you're it's almost like I mean I like berets and stuff, but I'm not going to be like, well, if you're not wearing a beret and a turtleneck, then you can't be an artist or a beatnik. It's like
I hope this isn't all my fault, although I'm a little afraid that it is.
well, I think you definitely brought it down to a level to how down to a level you brought it down. That's still very questionable.
I'm lowering the bar. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, you lowered the bar.
No.
But it's like,
Arguable.
yeah, it's like you can't, the thing is, I think what you did is really good, but at the same time, it's like you can't teach, like everyone. That's another thing. It's like some people just don't have the capacity to learn or want to learn. And they'll take the aspects they like of it, which is usually just the fashion and like the dark stuff,
But
which I think that's what
robes on the
happened.
street? Was that just
I mean,
like
I have a robe type thing that I wear too, but it's but I think at this point it's more like a I guess kimono type robe or
there's a
something.
kimono? Okay.
Yeah. So, but it could still be
It's
mistaken for a
just
robe.
it's just flowy.
Flowy and it's black. So
Oh my God. It's so much worse than I ever imagined.
I think they'll grow out of it as a phase, and then some people will probably maybe discover some really good aspects of it because they're going through this phase. Maybe they'll start taking it seriously.
This has always been my hope. I mean, that was always the plan, right? The plan was that obviously, and I knew that going in, even 10, 15 years ago, I knew that up front that there was going to be tackiness and subcultural commodification, and that probably it would end up then being recapitulated. Like basically, if I got big enough, it would be recapitulated by the mainstream culture, just like punk rock was and things like that. But at the same time, that changes the world. And yeah,
Yeah,
there's tacky side effects like that, and that's pretty cringe. But
yeah, but it changes
hopefully,
the world, but it also brings it back to it also makes it normal, like punk is not like what it was, it's not this. I mean, there's still people they're doing it and they're living by the principles or whatever, but it just also dumbs it down so much where you have Kanye West in the studded jacket, like
right.
and but then again, that's just a fashion, so it doesn't really matter, right? So
Right. Well, it's like I feel like at the time in New York, like the early, the people were like an early infection vector. It's like a few viral cells, if you're not cells, but a few viruses or bacteria, and then now it's spreading through the culture, and it will probably continue to spread. And my guess is that it's going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And my reasoning for that is that it's empowering, and people feel very powerless right now, and they feel like things are falling apart. And I think that, okay, I probably overly cringed at this, but it's a good thing, right?
Some look really sexy in their robes.
Okay, all right.
So I give them that. They're doing it well.
Okay, all right.
But the whole thing is like, yeah, if you're gonna be all dressed up and give me attitude just because I'm not dressed like you, then yeah, that to me is like a number one clue that you're a charlatan.
Well, that's just scene behavior in any scene, right? It's just like, okay, but that has, clearly that's someone who is not evolved in the slightest, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also if you're doing this stuff, you're supposed to be somewhat evolved, so it kind of cancels it out, right?
Right. Well, I still see that here too. It's like,
Oh, you must see it all the time over there, Jesus.
Well, I never leave the house, but when I do, I see it. Which is like once a year or something. That's not true, but I do. Maybe twice a year I leave the house. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of the plan, right? It's all part of the spread of it through the culture, and on the other side of it, we'll have people feeling more. My ultimate hope is that people use magic as, I mean, this is my ultimate hope. It's like that people use magic as a pedestal. I want them to feel empowered by it. And then once they're empowered, once they've walked up a couple stair steps and think, okay, well, I'm not just subject to the weight of the world. I do matter. I do have a true will. I do have tools for actualizing myself in the world. Then once they've raised themselves up and they can stand on magic, then maybe they can look over the wall and look around and see the world as it is and say, okay, well, that was cool that I had that experience. It's like, well, now how do I really contribute to the world? What can I really do? What can I really bring to the world? And not get stuck in the glamour of it. It's similar with psychedelics. Terence McKenna said, when you get the message, put down the phone. I think it's to some extent similar to magic, although there's great practice. There are practices of magic that can maintain and sustain somebody throughout their whole life. I mean, meditation, obviously.
Yeah, but all those things require discipline, and people don't have discipline.
Well, that's the key, right? The whole point of magic and meditation is discipline is almost the point. It's like the practices are just there to foster it. I'm not gonna start doing my Genesis Peorage impression and singing discipline, but
I think without discipline, it's too inward, and then it's like you're just sort of like gonna implode. So you sort of need the discipline to just to find it if you're looking for it. I mean, some people don't really care; they just want to just be rich, be beautiful, and have people love them. And that's all they care about.
Right. They'll find out real quick how hollow that is. Although, hey, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're seeing that with Hollywood right now, right?
What do you mean?
Like, well, it just seems like anytime any story comes out about an actor, you just think, oh my God, how soulless are they? Like, could they sink no lower? Like, they have like no dignity.
Yeah, I've become pretty inoculated to it living out here. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. Well, what do you think is next? I mean, the future is kind of a question mark for me now. I know that we've got some huge things on the horizon. Obviously, there's the midterms. There's the question of whether Trump is going to get a second term, and then there's some things like automation is on the horizon. We have no idea how people are going to respond once everyone's losing their jobs to automation. There's the question of universal basic income. One of my hopes is that for people who can take full advantage of that, is that actually provides a pretty awesome window to get serious about spiritual practice, particularly if people are living on little means. And then, of course, there's the whole question of AI in general. The future is pretty intense, but right now we're in a bit of a lull period outside of the fights around Trump and the Supreme Court and things like that. But I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's still very fucked up that all those kids, will probably never be reunited with their
Oh, it's
parents. Like they're
awful.
all lost.
It's beyond awful.
Things with like immigration are just
That
awful.
must have affected you quite a lot.
Yeah, it brought back a lot of stuff. I mean, it's like when I have like friends that were like, we're not even friends, just acquaintances that were just like, oh yeah, fuck, or we shouldn't be lending any more people. And I'm like, yeah, you say that, but who you saying that to?
They said
You're
that to
pretty much.
you?
Yeah, and they're like, oh, not you, and I'm like,
Whoops.
yeah, yeah, exactly me, because I'm just like those people. I'm
Wow.
not any, there's nothing better about me. I came to the country just like they did.
What was their
Um,
reaction when you said that?
they were surprised. They were really surprised. I think they think that you have to be like some uneducated person or some slime ball to just risk go out try to get into the country legally or something. They don't realize that it's people that have dreams and hopes and or are looking for a better life or just want to restart their lives. They don't realize it, and I hope they do now, but who knows.
Were these people like, ashamed when you when you said this? Did they reconsider or
No, they had like an awkward moment, and then they never mentioned it to me again.
oh my God. Okay. Hopefully they thought, hopefully they, it sparked a brain cell or two.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what about in terms of, the counterculture magic? I don't know. Have you seen it change significantly in the face of Trump?
Well, I think, yeah, everyone's angry, nihilistic. That's just sort of the norm, right? Everyone's always like that. Will they change into something else? I don't know. I just feel like it's always going to be like that. And I don't really feel like there's too much change going to go on. Usually in your life, when everything starts going wrong, is because you're supposed to make changes in your life so you could advance.
I agree.
And I feel like that's what it's going on in the world right now. There's all these horrible things happening all the time, and we're just not advancing. So they're just going to keep happening because we're not learning. And eventually it's just going to be like, okay, aliens are coming. But I've been waiting for the aliens forever. And but I'm not like one of those people. They're going to come save us. No, I think they're just going to come and be like, oh, these people are horrible. Let's just blow them up.
We should hang out with Whitley Strieber, and figure out the codes.
Well, let me know.
They sound pretty scary, though. I don't know. Like his book is pretty frightening. It doesn't sound pleasant. It basically just sounds like he's just kind of going through his day, and then 2 or 3 times a week, the aliens will just like show up to like molest him, basically unannounced. It's pretty frightening.
Yeah, that doesn't. It kind of sounds like being a pet, right?
Yeah.
Like I pick up my cat and pet him when he doesn't want me to. So it's like, and then I was like thinking about that the other, like I'm like here chasing him around and he's like running away from me and I'm like grabbing him and not letting him go and I'm like that's fucked up.
Well, let me ask you this. Maybe we can, as a way to wrap this up. If there's something that the human race is supposed to be learning right now and is not it's not learning, that is causing all this stuff to happen, what do you think that would be?
Don't be a dick. Like, and also it's just like, who cares if someone has a different opinion than you? As long as they're not like punching you in the face, who cares? Just walk away. Like really, like do you really have to sit there like shouting back at each other? Like you don't. Like you could live with some in the same place with someone that has a totally different opinion than you, and you could still sort of get along. I don't know. I just think everyone's too hostile and everyone's into being so righteous. And also stop labeling and stop making yourself seem so elite by being in a small category. I feel like the more labels you put on yourself, the more distancing you're becoming from, the more distant you're becoming from other people. And that way, then there's no hope for anyone getting along, right? How are we all supposed to get along if everyone just says like, oh no, I'm part of this group, I'm part of that group. There's too many fucking groups. Delete them all. Start over.
Well, I'll do my best to. I will struggle to live up to this. It's good advice for us all. I definitely have my polarizing moments, although I'm trying not to as much. Well, this is an amazing conversation. Where can people find out more about you and see your art online?
GeaPhiles.com, GeaPhiles. And also, like, that's just my handle, like, on everything, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So I'm easy to find if you want to find me.
All right. Well, absolutely lovely to talk to you, as always, Gea. And
Thank you for having me.
let's talk again soon.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Hope you really, really enjoyed that podcast. Don't forget, office hours are coming up this Saturday, the 29th. And if you're listening to this podcast after the 29th, don't worry because they happen every 2 weeks. All you have to do to join those office hours is to become a site-wide subscriber at magic.me, so monthly, yearly, or lifetime, and then you'll have access to those sessions. So I will see you in class on Saturday, and if you haven't already, please definitely make sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever else you get podcasts. Got a lot of great episodes coming up, and I would not want you to miss them. All right, be good, hang in there, and stay awake.